My name's Trey Carland, and my guest today is Mary O'Malley, who is author of What's in the Way is the Way, and I think you might have another book, do you?
That's my fourth book.
Oh, okay, so you've got multiple books.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. The first one is Belonging to Life. The second one is The Gift of Our Compulsions, a radical revolutionary approach to dealing with compulsions. And the third is The Magical Forest of Aliveness, which is a little fairy tale for adults about what really is going on.
That sounds exciting.
Yes.
Well, I've read, I guess you could say I've been digesting What's in the Way is the Way. It's a great book, and I'm not all the way through it, mainly because I've been taking my time and sitting with the teachings that are coming out of this, and it's just great. And the title says a lot. What's in the way is the way.
Is the way. It's the core of the message.
It is. It is. And one of the things I've gotten from it is the use of compassionate curiosity to examine those stories that have been running in us for years and years. And I've gotten a lot out of that, just sitting with those compulsions, those reactions as they come up, and it's been quite helpful for me, which is why I was really interested to interview you.
I'm so glad. I think for your listeners, it may be skillful to start with the meadow metaphor, because it really gets to the heart we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. Is that imagine a beautiful meadow. Of course, I live in the Northwest and backpack around Mount Rainier, and oh my God, the meadows and the wildflowers. And the thing to remember is in the meadow, everything flows. Mm-hmm. Day flows into night, winter into spring, light flows, water flows, sound flows, birth to death, death to birth. And there's nothing in the meadow that needs it to be any different than what it is. We lived in the meadow when we were young. There was a time when there were no thoughts in our head, I mean, it's pretty amazing to think about that. We have like 65,000 a day now. But there was a time when there were no thoughts. We were life. We were a part of this flow. It's separated out. And that's what we're homesick for. Because as we grow up, the clouds that used to travel across the sky, they begin to lower and lower, and this is what I call the storyteller in our heads. We have the storyteller that talks all day long, and it likes this, and it doesn't like that, and thinks it should do this, and shouldn't do that, and this is good, that is bad, that is right, that is wrong. And slowly, surely, the clouds begin to enshroud you, and you can no longer see the meadow. You haven't left the meadow. That's the key part of this metaphor. You have never left the meadow. You have never left who you really are, which is awareness that doesn't have any difficulty with anything that is passing. But after I read the book, this other part of this metaphor, after I wrote the book, this other part of the metaphor came. Now, here we are, we're enshrouded in clouds, and we haven't left the meadow of our being, we just think we have. But then we hear that if you capture enough of the exotic butterflies that live in the meadow, then you will be happy. So we all become seekers, and I love I like metaphors. I mean, pictures, I think, are worth 1,000 words. Imagine you're an alien and you just landed on planet Earth, and you landed beside this meadow, and you see this person with, you think it's a person, but it's something that's moving around with this butterfly net and all these clouds careening around the meadow, trying to butterflies. And every once in a while you do get a butterfly. The love of your life, walks into your life, and 6 months later you discover that he squeezes the toothpaste tube from the middle, or you've lost enough weight that you consider now that you're okay, or you just won the lotto. And for a while, everything, that careening around calms down. But then it's never enough. Because what for is the meadow. And this book not only offers that truth, but it also shows that how you come back to the recognition that you're always in the meadow is not by trying to fix anything, change anything, getting rid of anything. My God, we use meditation to go to enlightenment, unending bliss and so on and so forth. And we don't see that the way back to the recognition of the meadow is to be able to see with great curiosity and great compassion all of the spells you took on. And I love the word spells because, it's something laid over the top of us. It's not true, and it can be lifted. And that storyteller that is this cloud bank is made out of all these spells. And you dispel the spells through the power of your accepting attention. And that's why it's what's in the way is the way, because all the challenges of our life are set up to bring up pieces of that cloud bank, beliefs, spells that we took on, like I'm not enough, or I'm all alone, or life never works out for me. Or, there's just so many spells that we have taken on, and we're beginning to really, truly beginning to understand the power of focused human attention. Mm-hmm. That when you have your attention and your immediate experience together, your attention becomes like the morning sun that burns off the fog. And that's what we can discover in our life, that our life is for us and is putting us in the situations to help us see the spells, so that we don't have to run around with a butterfly net the rest of our lives.
One question I had, which you might not feel is relevant, is maybe what led you to the discovery of all this. A lot of people have to go through a period of suffering, maybe hit bottom before they start actively seeking, and eventually that leads one to where you are, so to speak. So is your backstory something you'd like to share?
I think it would be, it's a very comforting and inspiring story. I asked Eckhart Tolle, does it require suffering in order to awaken? And he said no. But he also said that the collective unconsciousness is so thick, the cloud bank is so thick, that it's usually only people that have enough suffering that they've been running around with a butterfly net and tripping over logs and breaking their leg and, so on and so forth, until they begin to sit down one day and say, I don't think this is working, trying to catch butterflies. So I was gifted, and I really, really, I'm very sincere to say that I was gifted with the kind of childhood nobody would really want. And I just kept on. They started sending me to psychiatrists when I was 10, and I just went down and down and down into deep and dark places, mental hospitals, suicide attempts, once gained 97 pounds in a year, at the same time that I was washing a lot of it down with alcohol and taking every drug I could get my on, because I didn't know how to be with what I was experiencing. It was everybody I went to in all those years, it was all about fixing me. And all you hear is something is wrong with you. And then a few years later, when I was 27, a yoga teacher came up from California, and I went to see him for a weekend. When I walked in there, my life was a B-grade, black and white, grainy horror picture. You know, I had just come out of my last suicide attempt. I felt such despair. You know, no way out. Nothing ever works for me. And he showed me, and in ensuing weekends, you know, when he would come up from California, he taught me one aspect of consciousness. And that is, in the seeing is the movement. In other words, we don't need to fix the clouds. And the clouds aren't bad or wrong. They're just what you took on as a soul in this lifetime. But he didn't teach it with heart. So I spent many years trying to use consciousness to get rid of these states. It's open, but it was still the world of struggle. And then I had the wonderful grace to meet and spend a lot of time with Stephen Levine, who has written many books on death and dying. But really, truly, it's about how to be fully alive. And his definition of healing, which I think is in every single one of my books, is healing is bringing awareness and mercy into that which we have held in judgment and in fear. So if we look carefully, you'll see we're ashamed of our cloud bank. We're afraid of our cloud bank. We hate our cloud bank, especially our deep vulnerabilities. And all we do is then work with the cloud bank. And he uses awareness and mercy. I use curiosity and compassion. That a good example out of my life is that part of the reason why I tried to kill myself so much is that I lived, the main state I lived in was dread. And dread is that feeling of something horrible is going to happen, and it's coupled with a fear that I am the one that is causing it, and even a disgust, you know, about myself. And it wasn't until I met the first teacher I began to become curious about it. But when I could finally bring my heart to bear to this core spell, well, I would say my core spell is no way out. I lived in dread, but underneath, you know, nothing had ever worked for years. I tried to fix myself. What's wrong with me? I couldn't fix myself. And then slowly and surely, I began to be able to bring curiosity and compassion to that actual state about how it lived in me. I didn't need to fix it. I didn't need to make it bad or wrong. And it was when I had developed the muscle of my curiosity enough, and I could actually stand with it. At the beginning, for just up here and a moment there, because that it felt like a hole that if I got too close to it, I would fall in and never come out. But slowly and surely, I was able to be present for that spell. And now I travel the world, and I have this rich and wonderful life because I was graced not only to have taken on so much pain and suffering, but also to be consciousness. And those are the two aspects of consciousness: curiosity, which the first teacher taught me, and compassion, or spaciousness, or allowing, or acceptance. You know, compassion is a word that has, people think it's something that you do, you know, and this is not something you do. It's something that you are around these spells, and they dissolve. And it isn't that they ever fully go away. I mean, one of my children lost her last winter, and many despair, fear, frustration, of course they arose, and at moments it felt like I crawled into them, but right away curiosity would kick in and say, oh, who's here? And then it would soften and move right through me, so then I could be present for her in the hospital room.
So there wasn't a moment where you felt this big bang effect where everything fell away and changed your life forever, or was there? It sounds like everything's sort of an ongoing process.
Well, you know what I asked Eckhart this, he stayed with me. I knew him way before he became, well known, and he stayed with me, and we were laughing at breakfast one day, and I said, well, you know what? I'm kind of envious. I want to wake up like you did. Bam, it's all gone. And he said, oh, Mary, most people will not wake up that way. I did have a moment. I've been fasting for 2 weeks, and this was when it was a year or two after I'd met the first teacher. And I'd been fasting with a doctor, pure water fast, for 2 weeks, and I flew back home, and I lived in this little cottage on a beautiful lake down there quietly, and everything opened up, and I experienced life as love and myself as a part of it. And I just cried and cried, and sometimes it was so intense I had to close my eyes because there's a part that didn't feel worthy of that. And then I would open up, and there it was. But I didn't, and I thought afterwards, I've got it! I didn't realize that the core of me remembered that there were 999 other parts that hadn't yet gotten the good news. And that's what I share in all the books about, how do you bring awakening into your life? I mean, mostly the people that have been on that path have lived in monasteries, or they remove themselves from life. Now, evolutionarily, we're waking up, and there's more and more of us that drive to work every day, and and raise kids and everything. How do you bring that right here into the living moment? How do you trust again that life is an intelligent process, and it's bringing you exactly what you need, either open to this living moment or to see with great heart the spells that pull you back into the cloud bank.
One of the things I'm wondering about too is living with someone who is deeply entrenched with various and sundry spells, and the tendency to get sucked into those and feel partly responsible for that, and taking it personally and wanting to fix that in some way, shape, or form. And there's this maybe instinctive reaction, at least for me, that wants to make things better, but knowing what I know, I do try to give more space to that and allow that. But oftentimes when blame is laid at my doorstep, there is... Yes. That blame comes, it's hard not to get involved. Yeah. So I wonder if you could speak to that.
Oh, absolutely. This came all in one fell swoop as I was writing the book one day. Life is set up to bring up what has been bound up. Mm-hmm. So it can open up to be freedom. You can show up for life. So in my world, this is a schoolroom. This earth walk is a schoolroom. And our ticket in is to take on some of the unconsciousness. And, I've worked with people for 30 years now, and we all have the same core spells, and we may, word them a little bit differently. But what we don't realize is that one of the most powerful places that you can begin to see your spells is in relationship. In fact, in my world, again, that whoever of the 7 billion people on this planet, you are living with that person, okay, that person handpicked by life to show up in a way to bring up what has been bound up, so it can open up to be freed up. So as you get further into the book, you'll begin to, I think there's a chapter called For You, and it really lays this out. We think that life is happening to us or by us, and we're in this power struggle with life. We like it, we don't like it, we want to change, we want, us to change, so on and so forth. You begin to become what I call concentrated. And you begin to do what I call the U-turn, the Y-O-U turn. That when life really brings something up inside of us that is a deep reaction, you may not be able to at that moment do the U-turn. Just later, an hour later, that night in bed, when you go look at your day and you begin to realize, oh wow, I really got caught here. And what I call it is becoming a tightness detector. The ego, when it comes across something it doesn't like, it reacts, it attacks, and it defends. And ego and storyteller are the same thing. Remember, the two components of consciousness are curiosity and compassion. Consciousness doesn't need anything to be any different than what it is. So we begin to become more and more curious about the reactions inside of us, bringing them the light of our attention. And as you strengthen that muscle of attention, you'll find yourself right in the middle of a reactive time, with this person. And all of a sudden consciousness will kick in and say, oh, what's going on inside? And you can literally get to the place where, somebody in one of my groups wrote down an experience she had of a very challenging conversation. And she was conscious the whole time. And these parts would come and she would see them and they would pass right through. And then she eventually thought that she just gave the person her attention. So trust that this person is hired from central casting to bring up what you are ready to bring consciousness to inside of you.
Does what you're talking about involve a little bit of what we might call psychoanalysis, where you look at the root cause of that reactive pattern and see that there's maybe this insecurity that developed when you were young, and this is just another manifestation of how it's affecting you today? Is it important to notice the why behind the reaction, or
not so much? It is important to understand that pretty much so our view of ourselves and our view of life was formed before we were 6. Okay? And in the book, there's 8 core spells that we all take on. And then what I did for a year was that I took these 8 core spells out into my groups, and then we have a list under each core spell about how you can describe it. It's very tricky what you're talking about here, because when we begin to meet a spell, let's say a deep insecurity of not being enough. Let's say that's it. The spell shows up as a holding in the body. It shows up as stories in our head. And it shows up as feelings. Because we're so attached to stories, it can be very powerful in the beginning to use your body. Because your body is free-flowing aliveness. Remember when you lived in the meadow when you were young. Then, slowly and surely, we begin to hold on to this and push that away. There was a study done once of children and their breathing patterns, and all the children, before they went to preschool, breathed their natural trunk of the body is engaged in it, just like you watch your dogs or your cats or your babies. Not one of them, when they went to first grade, was breathing their natural breath. So we learn how to tighten. We learn how to become what we think we should be. We learn how to go up and get caught in our heads. Now, the body can be very powerful. You know what you're experiencing, but you've just had an argument with the person you're living with, and you just go into the other room and you notice there's this huge knot in your stomach. Okay? So you bring it your attention. And at the beginning, because we're not used to this, Trey, it can be very helpful in order to train your attention to be curious about what's going on. You know, how big is this knot? Does it move around? Does it come? Is it on the surface? Does it go deep in? Does it go all the way to my back? That type of thing, where you keep your attention there. The more that you do that, you will find naturally the voice of the spell. It will just appear. You will hear its world, like that dread world for me that I lived in. And I had horrible digestive difficulties for a long time in my life because that was really deeply held, in my belly. And as I was able to bring my attention to my belly, then I was able to hear the spell's world. Oh my God, I'm the worst person on the planet. Something really bad is going to happen. I don't know what it is, and I got to run away. As it got heard. And that's how spells begin to open back up again. So your question was, do we need to understand the why of it? I don't think so. I don't think it, I think that's more of a head thing. It can be helpful, maybe at times, to, discover your mother or apologize for how your father beat you, when you were young. But that only takes you so far. That's the world of understanding. We want to take it a step further, which is the world of the curiosity and compassion that literally can open up these spells again. So dread is still a part of me. It used to be 110% of me. It's maybe 1% of me now. It's very calm a lot of the time. But you put me in the right situation, and it will wake up. And I know the bodily patterns so well that I can just go right to it and give it attention, and it calms down.
So when you direct your attention toward these feelings in the body, and eventually they I believe you said, they give you a voice. They
Yes.
Would that voice be something like dread or not good enough or?
Yeah. It would be the story that you took on when you were young that caused that particular, let's say it's a lump in your throat, and let's say that your mother died when you were 9 years old, and you just have had all these with your throat. No, yeah, my mother died, but, really, that was no big thing, And slowly and surely, as you can bring your attention to that lump, in your throat, you'll begin to hear the feelings and thoughts you had when, after your mother died, that caused you to hold on to this energy. Because each of these spells has their own view of the world. And they, just like you and I, it's like if you have a bad day and you go to a friend that does with you what we do with our spells, with this sadness or this loneliness or this despair or this, not enoughness, and that person ignores you. We ignore this stuff. We just go eat the thing, drink the thing, smoke the thing, They judge that place again, get off of it, or they try to fix you. None of that feels very good. But if you go to a friend that just listens, and this is why I'm saying we're beginning to understand the phenomenal power of human attention. If they just listen, they don't even say anything, but you can feel that they are really there with you. You talk about 15 minutes, and then you go, I think it's the power of attention to move. Now, in that situation, you're not recognizing the actual spell, or maybe you are. Maybe you're talking about it. But where we learn how to do it is inside of us. And we can set this bound-up energy free. And that's why you're living with the person you are, so that these can come up, so you can bring it the attention, and this can happen. And then you're back in the meadow, because it's always here.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it needs to come up a lot of times for some people, the same spell, in
Absolutely.
order to see through it. So it's not just an instant recognition and boom, you're free of that spell.
Yeah, the deeper ones especially. Mm-hmm. The deeper ones. And I just had this thought, if your listeners are not interested in getting the book, email me and I'll send them the list of the spells.
Okay.
Because it's so powerful. Stephen Levine, my core teacher, said, I'm going to create a hat. And when you put it on your head, it's going to instantly broadcast over a loudspeaker all of your thoughts. And I was in a room with 200 other people, and believe you me, there was a collective groan that went through the room. And you said, no, you would have so much freedom, because you would see we're all doing the same thing, and we're trying to pretend we're not. We put on our persona, our mask, and we try to pretend that we're all together. And yet, who is it? Thoreau said, most men lead quiet lives of desperation. There's really a homesickness inside of us, and a homesickness for the meadow. And there really is that sense for most of it, that I'm not in the meadow because I have done something wrong, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not right enough, and because of that, I will always be alone. Mm-hmm. And that's the power of reading these spells that of course, I hang out with people, that I create places where it's safe to be real. And, you discover that, you've got that too. Oh, yeah, I've got that too. And that's the power of reading all the 8 core spells, but then all the different ways you can say the spells. Mm-hmm. And you begin to realize that maybe, just maybe, I'm not alone in this world of struggle that I have lived in. It seems like forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely comfort in knowing you're not the only one. I've been noticing that lately. And it takes the specialness out of it. I'm special because I have this specific problem that only I have.
Yeah. Yeah, and mine is worse than everybody else's.
Right.
I am special because I am better at loneliness than anybody else. But it's just the meadow is always here. Just a rush of tears. I'm not connected to the meadow all the time, because I am still a work in progress. Somebody asked Stephen, how long has this taken? He said, it's the work of a lifetime. But what I would add is, it's the only game in town. Mm-hmm. To bring consciousness to our unconsciousness / spells that keep us caught in this cloud bank of struggle, which a lot of the times is just very minor. Oh, my hair doesn't look good today, or, the stoplight is too long. But it is that world of struggle that keeps us separate from what's really going on here. And that's the meadow.
I guess I just recently wrote a blog post called Mountains Out of Molehills, and it was sort of inspired by my wife, and who tends to make really big issues with really small things.
Can I add something? Can I interject?
Yeah, go ahead.
Storyteller.
Right.
She doesn't. It's so important to make that shift. The type of storyteller that she took on, which is the spokesperson for the Cloud Bank of Struggle, makes mountains out of molehills. Mm-hmm. So.
And I guess bringing some type of compassion instead of wanting to point out that this really isn't a life or death situation, which there's this natural tendency to when you see a loved one suffering unnecessarily. And I guess that's part of my cloud bank is this idea that
yes,
I am somehow responsible.
So deep in males, so deep in males. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Have you noticed more women in your groups than men over the years?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And but I do have men, but I would say it goes anywhere from a quarter to a third. Yeah. You know, and I would hope. I mean, this is about being real and actually experiencing what we're experiencing. None of us were supported in that when we were growing up, but boys were really, truly not given the right to actually, I mean, they have to be on top of it, and they have to, be strong, and so on and so forth. And so the cloud bank for turning towards our experience seems to be a little thicker in the male, but that's starting to change, and that's exciting for me.
Yeah.
But here you are with that sense of, we all want to be heard. So do the spells. Yeah. And, I oftentimes describe it in this way. You have a little girl, and she falls off her tricycle, and she runs in the house, and she's, scraped her knee, and we do with her what we do with ourselves or with our loved ones. Oh, you're okay. Stop making a big deal out of it. Ignore her, or we say, oh, stop your crying, I'm going to send you to your room. Now, imagine a more conscious parent and just getting down on the ground and saying, what's going on? And the little girl picks up her pants and says, oh, you got a boo-boo, Mm-hmm. And, you kiss her, and then off she goes. Why is that so powerful? Because her experience was met. Now, what we usually do with our loved ones is we try to fix them, because that's the only system that we know inside of ourselves. But it is, I assure you, as soon as you try to fix somebody or say how you're doing it is not how it should be, up comes resistance, up comes the wall. But it is absolute magic to actually are for a few minutes. Then they may be open to, exploring how we could see this differently. But the first key is always recognition and acknowledgement, whether it's with another person or ourselves. And the more we do it with ourselves, then, and meet these different parts inside of ourselves, when they come up inside of somebody else, we'll be much quicker to bring to it rather than reaction. But of course, we need lots of really good reactive times to catch ourselves, maybe in an hour. We spend one whole hour or maybe the whole day fuming about the other person. Our mind is trying to figure out how we can get them to change and so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden, curiosity says, oh, boy, the reactive one really is strong. See if I can be with that. And that's alchemy. I call that alchemy, the power of bringing your attention and your immediate experience together.
One of the things I thought about while you were talking earlier about the body is the amount of energy from long-term stress that gets pent up in our muscles and things like that, and whether or not body work is one of those things that can maybe help release some of those stories, or I've had past experiences where I've become very emotional during a massage or that sort of thing. It's been a few years since that happened, but I've wondered whether or not you could maybe help topically to a certain extent through body work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's another way to bring attention to our immediate experience. And remember, most of these spells were taken on before we were 6, before we had a logical brain. And so, and if you're around little kids at all, you'll find that the main way that they have to express what is going on is with their body. You know, they'll go into, fits of, the whole body, whatever, or they'll just cry and cry. And so the body is holding a lot of the spells. Yes, they have stories, but the body holds in tightness. And massage can help you see the patterns of holding. So what I suggest to people when they go and get a massage is to have it be a meditation, to have your attention be where the person is working enough that you can begin to notice what the storyteller what the feelings are doing. And so massage can really help you begin to see these patterns of holding and train you to be very curious with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting, and I've learned a lot from your book in the simple act of putting a question out there and not looking for an answer and just waiting. And it seems like life's giving me some very interesting guidance right now from that. And one of those things had to do with I for some reason read this email that had to do with traumatic release exercises, which is some form of self-body work that involves tensing your muscles and then allowing them to just shake, basically, for a while and let go of that pent-up tension. And that and several other things that I don't really need to get into, but there's guidance coming now that I've opened up that channel.
Yes.
And so I'm kind of excited about that.
I mean, we've tried to describe this whole journey through life, through all of our myths. There really is a very similar storyline through all the great myths. And one of them is that when you're on the way to, off the tail of the boar in the mountains, that if you wake it up, it will kill you, and bring it back to the witch of the north, in order to make the brew that will cause you to see clearly through the clouds around the castle where the princess is and all that, is that in all of our myths, usually there's somebody that is an ally, like the toad that lives, in the swamp, and it's a magical toad, and the magical toad gives you a talisman. It gives you maybe something to wear around your neck, or a poem to keep on saying, or a magical sword. The talisman that I think is one of the most powerful gifts that we can be is asking a question without looking for an answer. We ask questions, and then we immediately try to figure them out. And that's like using one cylinder of a 12-cylinder car. Mm-hmm. This whole process is intelligence. As I look out my window, I just see all these varieties of trees. All of them have been made out of... What is that intelligence? I don't think you can give a word to it. But to see that at one time you were one cell and now you're 70 trillion cells and they all work together without a thought from you. There is, an intelligence is the closest word that I can come, but it's something even more than that. And this intelligence is always with us. and it for the opening of a question. And now you can see how you begin to live the answers. And that's using all 12 cylinders of the car.
It's great stuff. Great stuff. And I'm getting a lot from your book. I can't recommend it enough to people. It is probably in my top 5, and I've read a lot of books over the years, so I encourage everybody to pick up a copy of What's in the Way is the Way. And I'm sure the rest of your books are just as good, but this is a really good entry point, I think, for people that want to break free.
And there's a 10-week process. You don't have to do it. There's a section at the end of each chapter called the Remembering section. And it really is about developing curiosity and then eventually spaciousness or compassion. And it starts with 5 minutes a day. Who doesn't have 5 minutes? The benefits are just phenomenal. But it's then we just add a little bit every single week so that you can learn, you can cultivate the 2 aspects of consciousness, which is curiosity and compassion or spaciousness.
I like that about your book, is that there are moments that you are to take a pause and just sit with what is for a moment, and that's extremely helpful. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, if they want to know more, I do retreats in beautiful places because it really, really helps to be in the kind of nature that reminds us of the meadow. I'm going to be in Costa Rica next February, and Hawaii the February after that, and I'm going to be in Denmark next April. I also have phone groups. I have phone counseling. It is helpful to hang out with other people that are awakening. And so if people want that list of spells or even the chapter on living in questions, just email me at the word awaken at maryo'malley.com. And that's my website.
Well, I am going to post a copy of my book review and this interview to my blog and just spread the word. I've already recommended the book to all the people that I know that are interested in this. So I fully anticipate that the sales of the book will go up after this. It's good stuff.
Jeff Foster, who endorsed the book, who is just a wonderful human being, he wrote the deepest acceptance. This work is medicine for the world. Mm-hmm. And I agree. We're ready. You look at the evening news, Trey, that's people living from their cloud banks. Mm-hmm. As more and more of us learn how to see through the cloud bank of struggle, we will become a part of the healing of our planet.
Yeah. And learning how to trust life again is part of transcending that.
That's even the darkest. Mm-hmm. Life knows what it's doing. Mm-hmm. You don't have to like it, but it knows what it's doing.
Thank you very much for joining me. And,
my pleasure. My joy. Take care, Trey.
Thank you. You too.